Usually on Quantum, we tell you stories about the work and research of professional scientists. But we're here today to show you a rather different side of science. We're celebrating the achievements of a remarkable group of amateur botanists, some of whom have dedicated a lifetime to making one man's dream come true. It's called Burrendong Arboretum, near Wellington in New South Wales. And here, on 160 hectares of land, they've put together the largest collection of Australian native plants in the Southern Hemisphere. For literally thousands of species, many of them endangered, this is a sanctuary, a living museum.
For 100 years, this was farmland, mostly 40-acre blocks growing wheat. But in 1964, this patch of land was turned into an arboretum. That is, a collection of trees, like a botanic garden. The difference here is that this botanic garden has grown out of the inspiration of one man, George Altifer, orchardist, historian, and poet.
Jiggery Thimble was a thoughtless chap. He snored like a grampus when he took a nap. Trees he climbed and seeds he sought, and the seeds that he found were eagerly bought by princes and prelates and intelligent.
Plants could be grown together in one area. Perhaps we all have a dream, and that was George's dream.
The dream of 87-year-old George Altifer has been to create a plant sanctuary. Over the past 25 years, he and his friends have grown 50,000 plants here, representing more than 3,000 species. There are at least 200 species that are rare or endangered, several of which are extinct in the wild. Like this Hakea crassinova, spotted one day by a botanist from Canberra.
Well, once one of the botanists said, "Oh, stop. What's that plant?" And they said it was one that was collected at Burrendong. The chap said, "That's extinct, that plant." And he said, "Well, it's growing at Burrendong."
George Altifer was a man ahead of his time. In days when extensive land clearing was regarded as normal farming practice, George was concerned that Australian native species were being irretrievably lost. It was back then that George sowed the idea of creating a great national garden in the central west of New South Wales. But it wasn't until 1963 that his idea fell on fertile ground, when Wellington Shire Council offered him 390 acres of land at Burrendong Dam. Ever since then, for George and his younger brother Peter, the Burrendong Arboretum has been a labour of love, one that has taken over all their lives. After a quarter of a century and 1 million hours of dedicated labour by the members of the Burrendong Arboretum Association, they're still planting. They're so successful at it that they've become valued suppliers of seeds and cuttings to botanic gardens around the world, including Kew Gardens in London. Here they've cultivated an array of Banksias, dozens of species. Some of them quite unusual, like this Banksia blecknifolia. In this species, the flowers grow at ground level, where they're pollinated by small marsupials attracted to the nectar.
This is a Dryandra, the same family as the Banksia, Dryandra speciosa. They tend to hold their heads down, unfortunately, and so you have to turn them up to look at them, but they're very attractive. Perhaps not a lot of people would have seen this Dryandra from WA, of course.
Could people grow this sort of plant in gardens along the East Coast?
Well, perhaps in some areas it would be difficult, but You'd have to pick your areas that you might like to try them. And
That's where your expertise comes in as the propagator.
I don't know about that, but I think really growing native plants is trial and error anyway, and we have certainly found that here at the Arboretum.
This is one of the rarest, and in fact one of the most interesting plants in the whole Arboretum. It's called Grevillea rosemarinifolia, and what makes it particularly special is that this is the type form or genetic parent of this particular species. In fact, until a few years ago, it was thought that this species was extinct.
Growing the plants. It also means keeping an accurate record of every single plant received, where it's from, its distribution and flowering dates, its scientific name and conservation status. Jack Harris, a member of the Burrendong Association from the very beginning, is transferring the Arboretum's meticulous records onto computer disk.
Well, it's important in that we can get all sorts of information about our holdings, about the plants we receive, and pass them on, if necessary, to other botanic gardens and even overseas to Kew.
Department, the future of the Arboretum is secure. However, the day-to-day running of the place still depends largely on the work of volunteers. And the pioneer workers are now in their autumn years. What's needed is a new generation of green-fingered helpers to carry on the vision of George Altifer and his friends.
Well, if you work at something long enough, you know,
Yes.
it comes to fruition, doesn't it?
That's true. Jiggery Thimble was a doddery man. He lived on the end of a billy can. Beer he drank, and pickles and cheese were the things that gave strength to his wobbly knees.
And that's quantum.